ActionSA National Chairperson Michael Beaumont joins me now live to discuss this further. Michael, of course, you are not happy with this. Tell us why.
Well, Shahan, I think it was with mixed emotions in the sense that, we think that Justice Moseneke has led a credible process. And it was a process for which this outcome was anticipated. But the fact that we anticipated this outcome is where our disappointment lies, because this process has had to conceive of the health and life of the South African people having to be weighed against the democratic project of regular elections. And our view is that this has become a trade-off in an environment where it was critical that both of these rights were guaranteed. And the fact that it has become a trade-off is a product of two things, really, Shahan. The one is an under-vaccinated population, and the other is an electoral commission who has fallen short of leading the country in terms of a safe election and communicating that standard so that people could have confidence to vote.
So let's talk about the recommendations, because former Justice Moseneke does say that if the elections are postponed, it should not take place no later than Feb next year. And of course, by then, hopefully, we will have a large part of the population vaccinated, which will lead to more people going out to vote. Is that not a fair recommendation?
Absolutely. I think under the circumstances, this is why we believe Justice Moseneke has led a credible process, because he's had to weigh up these scenarios and has come to the logical conclusion that it would be better to hold an election when a greater percentage of the South African population has indeed been vaccinated.
However, your statement says the consequence of such a delay is the prolonged misgovernance by political parties and councils based on the votes of South Africans more than 5 years ago. So you're still raising concerns about this delay, even though it's just for a couple of months.
Yeah, look, absolutely, Shahan. And I think the point is that we are in a situation where this delay has become necessary. But the fact that it has become necessary is something that South Africans should be very angry about. And they should be angry about the fact that a choice has had to be made between their right to life and their right to vote at a time in which these two things are very interrelated. This is a time where the South African people need to be voicing their concern and expressing their accountability for the management of this COVID-19 pandemic in such a manner that we regard the right to life and the right to vote as interrelated. It has become a choice between these two things precisely because of the factors that I mentioned, including the IEC's slow pace in communicating its standards of running free and fair elections that can make the South African public confident to vote safely.
So let's talk about this delay and how it'll impact people over this couple of months, if it does happen, right? Because the IEC still has to decide on whether or not it accepts these recommendations and on the way forward. So if elections are delayed for, just say, 4 months, do you think that municipalities will fail to deliver even further to their communities and that things will get worse than they already are? Or will it not? Because the reality is, 3 to 4 months is not going to make a big difference.
I understand the perspective, Shahan, but I think there are many municipalities in South Africa where actually 3 to 4 months does mean a lot to people. When you live in a municipality where your electricity is constantly going out, where your provision of water is unstable, when you have sewage running down the streets, and when public money is being stolen on a daily basis, there are municipalities in South Africa that have been under administration for 10 to 15 years. And when you look at the Auditor General's most recent report on the state of local government, I think there's a lot of people who have waited for their opportunity to hold their public representatives to account. And any delay in that regard is obviously greatly unfortunate.
And what about the IEC's role in all of this? Because you also raise questions about the IEC allowing itself to be led by the vested interests of political parties.
Yeah. Absolutely, Shahan. So, my perspective is that the IEC, as the constitutional authority on elections in South Africa, had an obligation to lead this discussion. But rather, it has been political parties that has led this discussion. And as Justice Moseneke has noted in his report, political parties have a vested interest in their particular outcome in this process. And I think the answer actually lies in Justice Moseneke's report, in which it conveys that a public opinion poll demonstrated that as much as 61% of the South African population would like to see these elections postponed. And that can only happen in an environment where the South African electorate does not feel confident in the measures that are being planned and communicated by the IEC to make sure that an election is not just free and fair, but that it is also safe. And it is our contention that the IEC had that responsibility.
A possible delay in this election could work in your favor, couldn't it? Because you're fairly new, which means you have more time to campaign and get people to even recognize you as a party that they would vote for.
Absolutely. And I think every extra day gives us more opportunity to reach more people and share our message. But I think, Shahan, it would be a mistake for this discussion to be couched in the language of what is convenient to political parties, when the weighty issues at hand are the health of the South African public and the democratic project of regular elections.
All right. Thank you so much for your time and your insight. Appreciate it. That is ActionSA's National Chairperson, Michael Beaumont.